I'm going to, I only have a half an hour, and this is a lot of stuff to get through in a half an hour.
Did you start the timer?
Yeah. I push the green
It's
button.
a new device, so this thing will vibrate at 5 minutes, 2 minutes,
There we go. Okay.
1 minute, then
Then
blow
it'll
up.
explode.
Then it explodes.
Great. So I'm going to do, in order to get in everything, this is also kind of is less theory and more history. So I can rant on theory for a long period of time without slides. But I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading, which I don't do so well, so I apologize for that. First, I'd like to thank Sarge for inviting me. You guys have a really amazing, passionate leader in Sarge. I'm really excited to have met him and been able to come up. I'd like to thank you guys all for coming and spending some time with me. I'm going to be talking about how we use lean principles to transform a 40-year-old company. This is my blog. This is the company's, the lab's website where we talk a lot about the theories of things we're using. Please, if you tweet, I would love if you tweet while I'm talking. I take no offense to it. I actually rather enjoy seeing what people get out of it. Again, 30 minutes is not going to be a long time to discuss all the rather subtle ideas of lean. But if I have one message for you guys to take away from this presentation, it's that real people are doing this work in real companies with real customers. And for all of the people involved, the customers, the employees, and the company, it's making a real difference. This isn't theory, it's practice. So I'm excited that that's happening in West Virginia. So this is not rock stars from Silicon Valley. This is not MIT grads. These are people who work hard, play hard. Most of them go home and fix their cars when they're done. Let me get started, and I hope to be able to answer questions until Sarge kicks me off the stage. I really love talking about this stuff. So the Library Corporation, we make software, and we make software for some of the largest libraries in the world, and we have a very large and diverse set of customers. The company has built its success on years of wave after wave of innovation. We were the first company to ever put any data on a CD-ROM. If you go to the Smithsonian, our CDs are hanging on the wall. We went to Japan, we wrote the codecs that allowed data, not music, to be put on a CD-ROM, and we did that so that we could deliver larger quantities of data to libraries. When we found out the libraries didn't have the computers to read the CD-ROMs, we gave them the computers. So our company gave many libraries in the United States the first computer terminal they ever had. So this is the history of innovation that the company comes from, and I'm passionate about that level of innovation. I'm really happy to see tonight the other speakers are from a lot of different kind of fields. So that we have some mechanical engineers, medical device field, a doctor, some information providers, a book manufacturer. One of the interesting things about Lean is that it is not just about software development like so many other things that I'm passionate about, but it is a way to think about how we work in a diverse set of industries. So though each of us comes from very different fields and we produce different value for different customer segments, we all share an engagement in what I like to call knowledge work. Other people like Richard Florida might call us workers in the creative class, right? So we work primarily with knowledge, and we create the software that works in computers and in people's minds, processes and concepts that make chaotic or chaotic environments more predictable or at least more manageable. At TLC, our knowledge work is most easily seen in the software that we produce, although we do various forms of data manipulation and sell data itself. So this is work that we do with our minds, and what I do as the CTO is I spend a good amount of time at this point in my career thinking about how we might optimize the systems that people work in to allow their minds to work better together. That's largely what I do at this point. The current cultural focus at TLC is that of learning. We're trying to develop what Peter Senge would refer to as the learning organization. I'm going to talk a bit about why we decided to focus on learning, how we think we developed that culture, and what impact it is having on our business. First, though, TLC was not always like it is now. And when Simon and I showed up about 5 years ago, we were hired to fix something. In 2007, when I arrived, the company hadn't delivered any significant upgrade to their flagship products in 2 years. The company was, in essence, outsourcing much of its innovation as it swamped itself in technical debt. There was an excessive backlog of customer demand for updates and a nearly overwhelming amount of failure demand, evidenced by an ever-growing trouble ticket load. The result of this could be seen clearly in a dropping customer retention rate. This company, when we got there 5 years ago, was bleeding and in a lot of pain. The company was attempting to support over 29 products with no development practices. Everyone lived in their own offices, often with the doors closed, and they would put paper over any windows. They were in there by themselves. No one knew what each other was doing. Most engineers were working on up to 6 projects at a time, with no known deadline that they could understand. These people were developing a lot of software, and they had no idea why. So we actually referred to this as mushroom programming. We would put them in dark rooms, shovel shit on them, and hope something grew. This is where we were. The employee compensation had stagnating. We took a NPS score of our employees. It was incredibly low. People wanted to leave the company if they could. And finally, the balance sheet was red. We were losing a lot of money. So we did something that I don't know that I would recommend to everyone, but it was drastic. We forcefully righted the ship by implementing a very strong implementation of Scrum by the book, and quite literally tearing down the walls in the company. We tore down everyone's office. No one was allowed to sit by themselves. No one was allowed to program by themselves. Everyone had to pair. It was incredibly prescriptive. I don't know, again, that I would recommend this for everyone. In this case, it helped tremendously to right the company and to correct it from its errors. So in 2011, after several years of hard work, we found ourselves in a completely different place. We now had a rigorous set of XP practices, a stable and with stable, consistent, frequent releases in desirable time frames. The software engineering teams now were able to address failure demand quickly and with minimal impact. The software, IT, and support departments have all adopted flow-based, Kanban-like processes. The support department went from an individual performance focus to a crew model with identified roles and team-based evaluations. This, along with significant improvements to the software driven by a focus on user experience, cut the trouble ticket load by 2/3 in less than 6 months, and it continues to drop. Our customer satisfaction, as measured by a Net Promoter Score, has increased 30%. We rival Apple's. The result of which can be seen in customer retention rates in excess of 98%. We are now operating in the black, and the average employee's salary since I got there has been increased 45%. So here's the trick. If this is the graph of the innovation of diffusion, or the diffusion of innovation, which it is, which basically says this is how a new technology might diffuse into a marketplace. The trick is this. Integrated library systems are over here. Every single library in the United States has an integrated library system. So I have just perfected a company that can produce extremely beautiful versions of something there is no market to sell. All right, so we have very good customer retention, and that's very important, but we're doing it inside a highly saturated, highly commodified market that's driven by RFPs with no incentive for innovation. So RFIP basically means that everybody, you have to check off this list. If you checked it off, they don't care what else is in your software. So the other thing is that we can't decide to innovate into new places and not have those things checked off. So it's a constantly ever-growing RFP-driven feature race. It's a very difficult place. Additionally, like anything in the public sector at this point, we are funded by local municipalities, cities, and states, and the funding for libraries is not going up. In fact, it's pretty regularly being cut. So finally, my software is designed to help you inventory and control physical assets, books. Most libraries have moved significant investments away from physical assets towards electronic assets. So my marketplace is also being disrupted. So, for a year or so after we kind of got into a place where we thought that we were going to be stable and successful, that we could please our customer base and grow it with small incremental innovation, we started wondering, are we applying, and we're still wondering this, but are we applying this world-class technical capability that we've developed to a marketplace that simply doesn't need it? Is there more valuable marketplaces that we might be able to deploy this capability towards? And so we hired a young woman who was a cataloger for many years, and she was a poet, and she's great. And she came in, and she was there for about 3 or 4 months. And she came to me one day, and this is what she said. She said, "I'm confused. Are we a library company that makes software or a software company that happens to make library software?" She had noticed this thing that started us wondering if we were doing the right thing, which was that we were very, very good at making software and we just happened to be doing it for libraries. So what could we do with that when we thought about it? So we are really good at, I think, at making software. I argue that we're a world-class organization at that. And this is a graph that Simon's the COO, made, and he likes to do these makeup graphs, so he makes up the numbers to prove a point. And this is one of those, and I really like it. So what it says, right, is that in most large organizations, you spend most of your money, totally made up number, most of your money doing ongoing operations, right? So ongoing operations is things like admin, accounting, HR, legal, ops, rent, IT support, implementation, management, compliance, sales, product engineering. This has nothing to do with whether or not your product innovates. This is just the cost of doing business, right? So most companies spend a significant amount of their money doing that, and then they do some level of sustaining innovation. So sustaining innovation is those things that just kind of keep you relevant in the marketplace. This is not going to change your marketplace, it's going to keep you in your marketplace. And then some piece occasionally they'll allow to sneak through a disruptive innovation investment. When I show this graph to other people, when we've shown it to other people, everyone insists that we've talked to that this number is very much too optimistic, and that most organizations invest significantly less than that even.
But it's an accurate guess. I mean, 0.82.
Yes,
very accurate guess.
It's very. I like.
Precise.
Yes, exactly. It's very precise.
That's a nice guess.
So, besides the obvious thing, which is that what this graph kind of says, which is that people don't invest enough in innovation, right? There's another thing that does say it. This is not just money. This is what the focus of the company is, right? Ongoing ops has a massive cultural effect on organizations. Focus on that, and it changes your culture, right? So how does it change your culture? Well, ongoing ops is about de-risking everything. It's about efficiency, and it's about failure avoidance. And innovation is quite a different place to play. So when we're talking about knowledge work, and we're thinking about knowledge work and innovation, there's certain things that are kind of present in it. And certain conditions. And this includes a high degree of uncertainty. So an inability to be predictive, too much information, not enough information, emerging information, very noisy information, frequent shifts between the degree of complexity and simplicity. And a great deal of what military theorists like Karl von Claus call friction, which is when chance events emerge as you work, making it very difficult to communicate your intent and to follow through on your theory. This means that we often find ourselves unable to make predictions about the future. So this gets us to a point where we need to start beginning to realize the nature of failure and how failure works in different conditions, right? So when we're talking about a standard condition, something which standardized work, failure becomes important to notice and to address. But when we're doing innovation, we need to actually have a culture that embraces learning where failure is acceptable. Because if you can't fail, you can't actually understand what to do next. I'm gonna try to talk about it a little bit like this. This is a graph that shows what I call the failing well graph. Failing fast is a nice mem. I love the mem. I like the idea of don't overinvest in ideas. So if you can figure out a way to shrink an idea down, test the critical assumptions, and kill the idea sooner than later, all the better. That's failing fast, and it's really important. But one of the things that most people don't understand is how to fail well. So failing well is about picking the types of ideas to do experiments on. So if this is your probability of failure, so over here you're pretty sure that your theory is wrong, so you have a very high probability of failure. Over here you're pretty sure your theory is right, so you have a very low probability of failure. And right in the middle is 50-50. So this is like a coin flip. This graph, by the way, is the graph of the stochastic system. So actually, all the interesting ideas in the world live in this 50-50 range, because the amount of information you get if you do something and you know it's right, you don't get any information from that. You just proved yourself right. Woo! You do something you stupid that you knew was going to go wrong and it goes wrong, again, you haven't learned anything. So in fact, the most interesting parts of the world and the things that we want to do experiments on and we want to learn about are the things that when we think about it, we go, there's a 50-50 chance that I'm completely wrong, but I'm also equally maybe completely right. So this point on the graph, and in organizations that start to understand this, we start talking about something called balancing advocacy and inquiry. So it's this point where we say, the other way I love to say this is, these are passionate ideas loosely held, right? So it's this idea that you believe very strongly that this is right, but the moment someone proves it wrong, you're like, okay, let's do something else, right? So it's a balance of saying, Sarge, I believe this. Can you tell me why I'm wrong? So advocacy, telling them why I'm right. Inquiry, why am I wrong? Invalidate my assumptions. Balancing those two things and teaching people how to find that point in their ideas is really critical. One of the things that's really interesting psychologically about this graph is that people really don't like doing things that they know are going to be wrong. It just doesn't make sense to do things like that. People really like to do things that they know they're going to do right. They're often rewarded for being right, right? So you actually are telling people to find this very strange, uncomfortable middle point in their experience where you're basically like, it's not just stepping out of your experience to have a different experience and to be in a different comfort zone. It's literally to say, I want you to step to the edge of failure. To the edge of failure where you're convinced that you don't know if you're going to fall over or stay upright. That's where you want to actually find people, right? So teaching them to have this experience has been really interesting. One other thing that's really interesting about this, the interesting thing about 50-50 failure is that you have the same amount of information on either side of this. So if you succeed or if you fail, you learn almost the same amount, which is awesome, right? Okay, so this is another model that we use a lot. This is called the Knevin model. If I get started on this, we'll be here until midnight. So I'm not going to do that.
Don't.
So the Kinevin model is a way of making sense of the type of work we do. Over here we have ordered ideas, including best practice and good practice. This is for the core part of our business, the part of our business where we want things to run like the train schedule. This is fine. It's great to have certain parts of the business. In fact, we aim to have about 80% of our business be run with ordered work, predictive, deterministic work. But innovation happens over on this side, and this is called unordered, non-deterministic work. It's the trick with it is that as a manager, I can't even tell you where to go. I can tell you kind of the qualities that I'd like to have, and often I can say, like, there's 3 or 4 good things that could happen, and if we could kind of get in the middle of those 3 or 4 good things, that'd be a great place to be, right? So understanding this model has been really critical, and we've been trying to teach it, and the criticality of it is this: we need people to understand what type of work they're doing so that they make the right types of decision about failure, so that they know whether or not it's okay to fail or if it's not okay to fail. Because it means that they have to do different things when they arrive at failure. They're gonna fail in both cases occasionally. But sometimes in highly ordered work, when you fail, you need to go tell somebody something's broken, right? In complex work, the answer is if you didn't put a big hole in the side of the ship, I don't care. I expected you to fail. Don't tell me about it. Doesn't matter, right? Getting this sense of space inside the organization so that people understand where they are in the model, how their work is being experienced is critical. So Kinevin is something that we work a lot on. So we needed to change, right? And we needed to figure out some way of innovating our way out of this problem, this market. So how do really big companies normally do this? Well, they make really big bets, is how most mature companies do this. And you can see this, you look at Yahoo and look at what Yahoo does. They bring in new CEO after new CEO who comes in and says, this is the big bet we're gonna make. And then they give it a little run and they see if it's gonna work, and it hasn't worked several times, right? So they take on major initiatives, they do a lot of internal marketing, a lot of external marketing, they do massive resource allocation, they start very large projects with very large lead times to try to fix themselves very quickly, right? Well, the problem with this from a manager is that you get sunk cost and you end up chasing them. You have invested so much emotionally and culturally in making this change that you can't stop even when you know the train's gonna run off the tracks, right? So all you can do is try to get ahead of the train and lay more track or figure out some other way to do it. But you know it's gonna fail eventually. And that results in a lot of panic pivots, right?
Are you dooming Yahoo, by the way, for the record?
Yeah, sorry.
Are you dooming Yahoo?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you tweet that?
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
I lost my rhythm, sorry. Okay, so this is the other way people do it, right? So the other way that people do it under slightly less pressure is they start to create these things. Skunk works, they take their best people, they have secret projects that they don't tell anybody about, they give all those best people all the best toys, and then they isolate them away from the rest of the organization. You can see this, the Blackbird is a perfect example of this, right? There's a lot of skunk works in aviation and things like this. And these are all like interesting, critical ways of thinking about the world. But the problem with them is that they actually don't have any impact on the cultural of the rest of the organization. So that's really important for us. We did not want to create another innovation lab and say only the good people get to go in the innovation lab, because by definition, it means that everybody who's not in the innovation lab is the crappy people. And the crappy people are going to be taking care of the product that makes all the money. So that just doesn't even begin to make sense. So we needed to design something, design an idea, a system that would be different than these two ideas which we didn't like. We didn't want to make a big bet. We also didn't want to create a skunk works. So this is our theory. Our theory is the most effective ways to organize a company to be successful in face of the conditions that I've described is to create an environment in which lots of people have both the ability and the power to make many decisions without a high degree of oversight. Underlying this theory are some key assumptions. Among these are people who operate under their own autonomy are more likely to care about their work, notice and react to changes in context, and be more innovative. The shorter the distance between relevant information and people making decisions, the better the likelihood that there's good decisions to be made. This combination of information and structures will act to make it more likely that when a shift in context occurs, people will act. It should be noted that there's not a great deal of practical evidence outside of TLC that any of these theories is true. Over the last few years, we've done a lot of research and exploring of these ideas with Jim Benson and others inside of the Lean community, and we believe that we're developing evidence that these ideas do work. So we want to continue to develop these hyper capabilities that allow us to apply more and more of our energy towards innovation. So here's our hypothesis. We're going to create a learning organization that's domain aware. So that's the Kinevin model stuff I was talking about. Distributed cognition. People inside the organization are expected to be aware of their environment and thinking about it, not just obeying orders. Distributed decision making. So literally, because our organization this is how flat we are. Simon's the COO, I'm the CTO, everybody reports to Simon. 200 people. So the result of that is Simon can't make all the decisions. He's literally incapable of doing it, so we have to distribute the decision making. So we get some very good things out of a flat org model that I can describe later, but it does mean that we have to distribute the decision making, which means that we need people to be able to learn the right decisions, and so we need to reward learning, which requires an understanding of psychology. We are using lean startup theories in the complex domain, so when we do innovation, in order to test innovations, so that people don't come to us with projects and say, this is the thing we are going to build, and then we say, okay, here's $500,000, tell us how it goes. We say, okay, well, why do you think that would work? Here's some money, go out for 2 weeks, interview some people, tell us what they say. And finally, we do diverse decision making. So diverse and distributed is subtly different. So diverse decision making is about creating, when we have critical problems, we ask teams to come in and come up with 4 to 6 different ideas on how to solve them, and we run 3 or 4 of them in parallel. And we do that because in the complex domain, we don't actually know the right answer. So actually developing multiple hypotheses